Step back in time to the Wild West, where the balance of law and order was as fragile as a spider's web. Are you ready to discover a world where justice was dealt with in the harshest and most merciless ways imaginable? Let's embark on this fascinating journey together. In the period of Old Bailey, judges had a range of punishment options, though limited by laws and earlier judicial decisions. The actual punishment a convict received could differ from the sentence given and can be found in the Life Archive. Common law felonies were originally punishable by hanging, but statute laws reduced its use. Misdemeanors were punished with non-capital punishments. Punishments were determined by the legal status of the offense, and juries sometimes altered them through partial verdicts. Convicts often received multiple punishments, such as imprisonment, fines, whipping, and the pillory. In the 18th century, there was a decrease in the use of death penalty, leading to the creation of alternative punishments, such as transportation and imprisonment. These new punishments showed a shift from physical punishment to reforms through transportation and imprisonment and became less public. The 19th century criminal law reforms further abolished death penalty for many crimes and strengthened the role of transportation and imprisonment in sentencing criminals. Death. In the 18th and 19th centuries, many property offenses carried the death penalty, with hanging as the standard form of execution. Judicial processes allowed for sentence mitigation and pardons, sparing some from death. Pregnant women could plead their belly, and if found to be so, their punishment was postponed until after childbirth, with many being pardoned. The use of this plea declined and eventually became rare. The use of the death penalty became more restricted, eventually limited to only the most serious crimes, with the exception of murder and high treason. By 1861, the death penalty was abolished for all offenses except murder and high treason. Execution with enhanced brutality. In the 18th and 19th centuries, women convicted of treason or petty treason faced the penalty of being burned at the stake. However, they were usually strangled before the stake was set on fire. This method of execution was abolished in 1790 and replaced with drawing and hanging. Men convicted of treason faced a more severe punishment of being drawn, hanged, disemboweled, castrated, beheaded, and quartered. This penalty was rare and only applied to those convicted of coining or petty treason. The last recorded case of drawing and quartering was in 1820. The Murder Act of 1752 aimed to reduce the occurrences of murder by adding extra consequences to the death penalty, including dissection of the body or display in chains. These practices were abolished in 1832 for dissection and 1834 for display in chains. Transportation. Transportation was a form of punishment commonly used in the 18th and 19th centuries, where convicts were sent to the British colonies, primarily in Australia, to serve out their sentences as indentured labor. It was seen as an alternative to the death penalty, particularly for less serious crimes. The transportation system was officially abolished in 1868, but the legacy of transportation can still be seen today in the Australian criminal justice system. Imprisonment. In the late 18th century, there was a shift from punishment towards reform for convicts. This led to the creation of imprisonment as a punishment for serious crimes, as seen in the passing of the Penitentiary Act in 1779. The first penitentiary, Millbank, opened in 1816, and an increasing number of convicts were punished by incarceration in prisons, which placed the open-style, pre-modern prisons with separate cells and silent and solitary regimes. Convicts were made to do hard labor and received religious instruction. The progressive stage system was introduced in the 1840s, where prisoners would start with solitary confinement and then move to a public works prison before release on a license if their conduct was good. This system replaced transportation and changed the legal framework to limit the growth of the prison population. Convicts were housed in different prisons, such as Newgate and convict hulks, and their place of confinement is usually found in the prison registers or convict life archives. Corporal punishment. Physical harm, such as whipping and the pillory, were commonly used as deterrents for crime in early modern times and were often inflicted in public as a spectacle. The pillory was used to punish defendants convicted of crimes like deception and perjury by destroying their reputation and signaling public condemnation. Crowds would gather around the pillory, and the offender, who was secured to the wooden structure, and express their disapproval by throwing objects like eggs and vegetables, mud, excrement, and even bricks and stones. This punishment was eventually restricted to perjury and abolished in 1837. Whipping was also used to shame and deter offenders, but the public whipping of women was abolished in 1817, and that of men ended in the early 1830s. Private whipping of men continued until 1948 and was used for those convicted of theft with violence after the passage of the Garrotters Act in 1863. Other punishments. In 1779, the Penitentiary Act allowed for fines instead of branding as punishment. The amount of the fine varied based on the severity of the offense and the status of the victim and offender. Non-payment resulted in jail time. Juvenile offenders were sometimes fined and sent to a reformatory, which was often not documented. Convicts could be sent to serve in the Army or Navy, or be required to find sureties, wealthy individuals who would post a bond for their good behavior. If the conditions were violated, the bond money was forfeited. The requirement for sureties was often combined with other punishments, such as imprisonment, fines, and the pillory, and even those found not guilty could be given the sentence if thought to be a future threat. We hope you enjoyed this journey into the brutal punishments of the Wild West. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. Until next time, take care.